Welcome to the Guitar Show. My name is Ramon Goose, and today we're going to be looking at the history of John Lennon's guitars. John Lennon was born on the 9th of October 1940 in Liverpool, England. When he was 11 years old, he listened to Elvis Presley's records. He learnt the banjo, and he learnt how to play Ain't That a Shame by Fats Domino. Whilst growing up, he would often visit Blackpool Tower Circus and often see artists there. One particular performer he liked was George Formby. In 1957, Lennon got his first guitar. He purchased the 3/4 size guitar by mail for about £10. This was a Gallotone Champion acoustic guitar, made by the Gallo Company of South Africa. It was guaranteed not to split. Julia Lennon allowed her son's new guitar to be delivered to her house, rather than that of disapproving Aunt Mimi. He used this guitar in his first band called the Black Jacks, with his bandmate Pete Shotton. As his mother had taught him the 5-string banjo, Lennon played this guitar with the 6th string left slack. With the addition of a few new members, he renamed his band The Quarrymen. And on the 6th of July 1957, whilst performing at St Peter's Parish Fete in Woolton, Liverpool, he met Paul McCartney. This guitar broke the following year, yet it's unconfirmed if it actually split. Lennon gave this guitar to Aunt Mimi, who then later passed this guitar on to family friends. In the year 2000, it ended up for sale at Sotheby's for the price of $250,000. In the autumn of 1958, the Quarrymen, under the name of Johnny and the Moondogs, auditioned for Canadian talent show host Carol Levis. The group performed Buddy Holly's Think It Over to a positive reception, but were unable to stay until the end of the competition to receive the results. As they were leaving, Lennon saw a cutaway electric guitar by the stage door, picked it up and walked off with it, later saying that the trip wasn't a total loss. The Deluxe Tuxedo model was one of the first electric models made in Britain. Lennon apparently hid it in the loft of his Liverpool home, and he was never photographed with it. The guitar remained unseen until 1996, when workmen found the guitar along with 2 banjo magazines in the loft. In 1959, Lennon obtained a Hoffner Club 40 guitar. He purchased this guitar one day before his band performed at the Casper Club in Liverpool. Aunt Mimi was a guarantor of the loan. She placed a deposit of £17 on August 28, 1959. Here we can see John playing his Hoffner Club 40 at the Casper Coffee Club. Cynthia Lennon is watching in the front row. He actually loaned this guitar to Paul McCartney, who restrung it left-handed and used it until Lennon sold it. In his words, at a profit. The guitar was sold in Hamburg, and its whereabouts are currently unknown. So, people of Germany, check your attics. This guitar here is a 1960 Hoffner Senator, and it is often said that John Lennon played one of these. However, there is no photographic evidence that he ever used one. One quarryman who did own a Senator is Ken Brown, and when asked about it, he stated, "I do not recall John actually owning one during the time I knew him," he replied. He may of course have acquired one at a later stage. I of course did own such a guitar. The Senator guitar was sold as an item belonging to John Lennon in July 2009 at a Christie's auction. It went for $337,000 and now resides at the AEI Museum in Seattle, Washington. In 1960, Lennon purchased a 1958 Rickenbacker 325 Capri model. This is a 5/8 scale hollow body electric. Its serial number was V81. George Harrison recalls, "We went into this shop in Hamburg. John bought that little Rickenbacker that became very well known through the Beatles concerts with the scaled down neck. I think he'd just seen an album by Gene Thielmans, who used to be the guitar player in the George Shearing Quintet, and had one of those Rickenbackers. You have to imagine that in those days, when we were first out of Liverpool, any good American guitar looked sensational to us. We only had beat-up, crummy guitars at that stage. We still didn't really have any money to buy them, but I remember that John got that Rickenbacker. What they call on a knocker, you know, money down and the rest when I catch ya. I don't know if he really ever paid them off." Lennon's guitar was one of 28 325 models produced by Rickenbacker in 1958, and 8 of these had a natural finish, one of which was John's. Around the same time, Lennon picked up a new Fender Tremolux amp, a tweed-covered valve 10-watt amplifier with a single 10-inch speaker. Guys, stay tuned to this channel because we're going to do a special video all on the history of the Beatles amps in the very near future. Only 28 of this model were made in 1958, but still several didn't sell, and in late 1958 or early 1959, those guitars were reconfigured from 2 knobs and 1 switch to 4 knobs and 2 switches. Lennon's was long thought to have been made from maple. The body and neck are actually older. Some who've researched the matter insist that music house Rothman in Hamburg wound up with the prototype from the 1958 New York trade show and sold it to Lennon. This guitar would have cost about £100 in 1960, but because apparently it had been hanging around the store for quite some time, Lennon picked this up for a lot less. Lennon mounted a Bigsby B5 vibrato and bow tie bridge. At the same time, they replaced the other knobs with new ones from Curry Electronics. Somewhere along the line, Lennon disconnected the middle pickup and in September 1962 had it painted black. It's been suggested that the refinishing was part of Brian Epstein's effort to spruce the band's look. But another source credits the refinish to coach painter Charles Bantam, who reportedly sprayed the Rickenbacker with black coach paint while the band took a brief holiday. Later inspection led Ron DiMarino to speculate the finish had been brushed on, so nothing is certain. In 1963, Lennon changed the knobs again when he had some electrical work done by Burns of London. Lennon played this guitar on stage and in the studio right through to the first Sullivan show and the Carnegie Hall shows in December 1964. And despite a bit of work on Beatles for Sale, Lennon decided to retire this guitar. In 1972, he had it restored to its natural finish by Ron DiMarino of New York, who replaced the cracked pickguard. It is said that it makes a final appearance on the Double Fantasy sessions, and also that Lennon used this guitar on Yoko Ono's Walking on Thin Ice in December 1980. This priceless instrument, recently displayed at the Lennon Museum in Japan, is now owned by Sean Lennon. In 1962, John Lennon and George Harrison each bought a 1962 Gibson J 160E acoustic electric guitar in Sunburst finish. The price of these guitars at the time was £161. They bought them in Rushworth Music House in Liverpool on 10th of September 1962. In this photo you can see Harrison and Lennon with store manager Bob Hobbs. These Gibson guitars were used on the track Love Me Do, which was recorded on 11th of September 1962. Lennon's J160E was used throughout the Please Please Me sessions, and unfortunately it was stolen during the 1963 Christmas show at Finsbury Park Astoria Theatre in London. Brian Epstein had to co-sign for the guitars and wound up paying it off after a year. Lennon bought this 1964 Gibson J160E to replace the one that was stolen, although he had been using George Harrison's Gibson Acoustic for recording. This guitar was first used in concert in Montreal on 8th of September 1964 and served as a backup for the 1965 World Tours. Except for an extra rosette around the sound hole and a visible orange label inside, it was identical to his first J160E. On this guitar, Lennon moved the pickup from the neck to the bottom of the sound hole, and then in 1967 commissioned Dutch artists Simon and Pathuma Aka the Fool to give it a psychedelic paint job to commemorate the All You Need Is Love satellite broadcast. You can see it in the rehearsal shots of that event. Later, Lennon had it stripped down and replaced the pickguard and put the pickup back where it originally was. The guitar can last be seen in action during the bed-ins, where Lennon scratched 2 caricatures of himself and Yoko on the front. In 1964, Lennon obtained a 1963 Rickenbacker 325 Jet Glow in black. Its serial number was DB122. This guitar, which was a solid top 325, was actually designed with John Lennon in mind, but it was not yet ready when Rickenbacker president F.C. Hall arrived in New York to meet with the Beatles before their Ed Sullivan debut. Hall had heard about the British band using his guitars and had tracked down Brian Epstein and arranged a private meeting, to which Epstein, probably with an eye towards replacing Lennon's battered Hamburg 325, readily agreed, which he gave to George Harrison, and also a prototype model 4001 bass, which Paul McCartney passed on as it was right-handed. Lennon's new 325 was updated with extra fine tuners, double-layered pickguard, improved vibrato and a slimmer body. Lennon's new 325 was shipped to him in Miami Beach in time for rehearsals for the second Sullivan broadcast. This guitar immediately replaced the Hamburg 325 as Lennon's main guitar, and it saw action right up until the late 1965 tours. After this, it served as a backup. The guitar's headstock was broken off at a gig in Hammersmith Odeon during a 1964 Christmas show when Lennon dropped it. The first album it was used on was A Hard Day's Night, which is my personal favourite, and was last featured on the Double Fantasy sessions in August 1980. At their New York meeting, Lennon asked Rickenbacker's president Hall to make him a 12-string to match his 325. And in March 1964, this 12-string Rickenbacker was shipped to him in London. The only differences are the headstock and the tailpiece. It was used in the studio on the album Beatles for Sale and served as a backup throughout 1964. You can see it being played on the show in Boston on the 12th of September. The vibrato was removed and replaced with a trapeze tailpiece before the prototype was sent to Lennon because reportedly it was impossible to keep in tune. Here is Lennon with a Ramirez A1 Nylon-String classical guitar. Lennon acquired this guitar in 1964 and it's said to have been called the Segovia model. It was used in the studio on tracks such as Anytime at All, I'll Be Back, And I Love Her, Yes It Is, and I Need You. Another acoustic from 1964 was his Framer's 12-string Hootenanny acoustic. This was a 5/024 model, which was sold for £42. Lennon used this guitar to record Help, It's Only Love, and You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, amongst other songs. This next guitar is a bit of an enigma. Here we can see John Lennon playing a Fender Stratocaster. The unusual thing about this guitar is that it has a black painted headstock. Fender have stated they never made a black painted headstock guitar in 64 or 65. The most probable explanation for this guitar is that Arbiter knew John Lennon liked black guitars, so it wouldn't be surprising if they actually painted it themselves and gave it to them. And as you can see in these photos, you can't actually make out at all the Fender logo. Here in 1964 is Lennon with the 64 Rickenbacker 325 Rose Morris Limited 1996 model. It came in Fire Glow Sunburst finished with an F-hole, after he broke his Jet Glow 325 model. Rose Morris sold these guitars for £166, and it was advertised as the Beatle backer. He used this guitar for the 64 and 65 Christmas shows. The guitar was later given to Ringo Starr, who used it on his own album in 2005. In late 1964, Lennon and Harrison sent roadie Mal Evans out to get a couple of Strats. Mal came back from Greenwoods in Kent with two 1961 Fender Stratocasters in a sonic blue colour, although personally I think these look like a Daphne blue. Apparently, Brian Epstein had agreed to pay for them if they were in the same colour. These were used on the Nowhere Man sessions and also on the Sgt. Pepper recording sessions. John's Stratocaster was listed as a 1962 model, although the serial number and the final whereabouts of this guitar are unknown. Leo Fender and his business partner, Don Randall, had been trying to get the Beatles to play their instruments. They had never paid an artist to play their instruments, but they were going to offer an endorsement deal to the Beatles. Don has stated in the past that it was a very large figure. Randall flew over to London to meet John and Paul. McCartney met him first and he was animated and talking about instrument ideas and sounds. And then Lennon came in and he was in a really miserable mood. And he was with Yoko too. And Lennon said, "Right, what the are we here for?" Randall said, "I'm from Fender." And Lennon said, "Yeah, what do you want from me?" Now Randall was going to offer them a large amount of money. But when Lennon heard them say he was going to give them instruments, he said, "Yeah, give us the instruments and we'll play them. Are we done?" And Randall never had to give them any money. This is a 1963 Gretsch 6120 Nashville model. Lennon acquired this guitar in 1965. It's a hollow-bodied, orange double cutaway guitar. Its serial number is 53940. Although it's unknown where this guitar came from, it was used on the Paperback Writer sessions, and then it was little used after that. A couple of years later, Lennon passed this guitar on to his cousin. As of June 2012, this guitar is on loan to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This is a photo from 1965, and here you can see all four Beatles receiving Russian-made nylon-string instruments. At the time, they were in the studio recording Day Tripper. It's doubtful these instruments ever saw any action, and apparently they were a gift from the Russian embassy in London. Here is a 1965 Epiphone E 230 Tt Cassino in original finish. John purchased the Cassino in London in 1966. It was used on the Beatles' final tour in 1966 and for the classic albums Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It can also be seen on the rooftop concert for the Let It Be film and his first solo album for the Plastic Ono Band. In 1967, when the other Beatles were painting their guitars, Lennon sprayed the back of this guitar, body and neck, with white and grey paint, leaving the Sunburst finish on the front but removing the pickguard. Lennon and Harrison had their respective Cassinos professionally sanded down to a natural finish, apparently to improve the tone. Other changes to this guitar were the replacement of the stock Cluson tuning pegs with gold Grover tuners. Here is a Guild Starfire 12 given to Lennon by Guild in August 1966. Although it never saw studio use, it was most likely used in his home studio. It had flame-style maple on the front with gold-plated hardware. It was presented to Lennon as a one-off by Mark Dronje, the son of Guild's founder Alfred Dronje. This next guitar is pretty odd looking. It's a 1966 Vox Kensington which Lennon received in 1967. This was a gift from Vox and it shows up on the Hello Goodbye video session shots. It's also seen with George Harrison rehearsing I Am the Walrus during the Magical Mystery Tour. Next up is a 1965 Martin D28 which Lennon received in 1967. This dreadnought acoustic took its place alongside the Gibson J 160E on the Beatles albums, beginning with The Beatles. He took it to India with him on February 1968 and composed on it most of the White Album songs. This is another D28, this time it's from 1962. This was a guitar that John Lennon used throughout the 1970s and also on his last live performance. Lennon purchased a factory condition Les Paul Jr. guitar with a tobacco sunburst finish around the early 1970s. The original guitar came with a single P90 pickup with a black cover and a wraparound tailpiece with Cluson tuners. It came with just a volume and a tone control with gold knobs. He took his Les Paul Jr. to New York luthier Ron DeMarino to be modified. Lennon suggested that he would like DeMarino to install a Humperdincker pickup and described the sound he was seeking from his little guitar. Lennon thought of himself as a rhythm player. In his own words, he was a rhythmer. DeMarino left the P90 alone but routed out a section of the body for a neck pickup. Instead of the requested humbucker, DeMarino installed a Charlie Christian pickup, which had a narrow string sensing blade and produced a clear sound. By all accounts, Lennon was quite happy with the results, and you can see him here playing with the finished product. In this photo you can see Lennon playing his Sunburst modified Les Paul Jr. At some point afterwards, he got DeMarino to sand off the Sunburst finish, in the same way that he had removed the finish of his Epiphone Cassino. DeMarino also replaced the original tailpiece with a Tune-o-matic bridge and stop tailpiece. And here you can see Lennon using this guitar on August 30th, 1972 at Madison Square Gardens. After this concert, Lennon decided to have the guitar refinished with a cherry stain. One interesting point to make here about this guitar is that it was strung with nines. So by all accounts, Lennon strung all his guitars with a light string gauge. Lennon was known for using resonator guitars, and here you can see a photo from 1972. Here he is using a National Resophonic tricone guitar, also known as a Style 1. He also played slide guitar with a metal slide on his pinky. In this other photo you can see him here playing a Dobro resonator style guitar. This is a receipt that DeMarino had in his possession, and it's a receipt for a Gibson Les Paul 1960 Cherry Sunburst. And here you can see John Lennon in the studio using the same Les Paul. The photo was taken at the record plant in New York City around 1971, and it's probably still owned by the Lennon family. Here's Lennon playing a cream Fender Telecaster with a Bigsby tailpiece. These photos were taken at the record plant in 1972. I'm not sure that Lennon actually owned this guitar, and it could have belonged to a studio or another musician. But guys, if you have any details about this guitar, let me know in the comments. Here's a photo of Julian Lennon with his father's Yamaha CJ Dragon guitar, which was especially custom made for Lennon. Whilst visiting Japan with Yoko Ono in 1977, he requested a meeting with Yamaha to talk about building him a guitar. After trying out several models, he settled on the CJ52 model, which was the same guitar that Paul Simon was playing. He requested for a dragon motif on the top using traditional Japanese art. This next guitar is called a Sardonyx 800 D2. Lennon used this guitar during the making of his last album in 1980, Double Fantasy. It was built by luthier Jeff Levin. It had a wooden body and an ebony fretboard. The matte black finish has a thick lacquer clear coat that gives the Sardonyx a plastic appearance. It featured 2 Bill Lawrence pickups and were connected to a complex 3-output wiring system that allows a player to send completely independent pickup combinations including different phase reverse and series parallel configurations to 2 separate stereo outputs or to a single mono output. It featured shallow hardware, a pair of stainless steel outrigger bars with anti-skid rubber feet and an adjustable balance arm on the upper bout. Only 15 to 20 of these Sardonyx were ever built. Here is Lennon with a Hamer special guitar, which was presented to him by Rick Nielsen, and this was a custom-made guitar, which was an all-white finish. It was given to him during the Double Fantasy sessions. Okay, this photo here is one of the last professionally shot photos of John Lennon. It was done in 1980, and here you can see him with a candy apple red Strat. These Strats featured 22 karat gold electroplated brass hardware. Okay guys, we're going to finish on this guitar, which is a custom Fender Telecaster from 1963. Lennon used this at a concert with Elton John on November the 28th, 1974, and this would prove to be his last concert live performance. This guitar was customised with Grover tuners and a Gibson humbucker in the neck. The pickup is mounted very close to the neck, and as you can see, the logo is upside down. Performing with Elton John, Lennon performed Whatever Gets You Through the Night, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and I Saw Her Standing There. After the concert, when Lennon came off stage, he told the waiting journalists, "It was good fun, but I wouldn't like to do it for a living." Thanks a lot guys for watching this video. You can really help me by subscribing and sharing and liking and all that stuff. Hope to see you soon. God bless. Take care.